Hello and welcome to our panel, The Future of the Old Republic. My name is Luke and this is Kelsey, and together we are the co-hosts of a podcast called A People's History of the Old Republic. Before we start, we want to thank everyone who helped organize ForceFest and make it happen, and thank you to everyone checking out the panel. As the title implies, we're here to talk about the future of the Old Republic stories in canon. Now, we obviously don't have any inside info about what's coming in the future, but we do run a podcast that focuses on the Old Republic stories and legends and how they may translate into possible canon Old Republic stories. So we're going to give it our best shot and discuss the future of the Old Republic. In case you're confused or unfamiliar, when we say Old Republic, we mean stories that occurred from the founding of the Republic until circa 1000 BBY, when the Republic was reorganized. Briefly, before we get to the panel questions, let's talk about everything we know about the current Old Republic in Star Wars canon.
Well, first, before we get started, let's give a shout out to Make-A-Wish Greater LA, who are helping to raise money for. So
Agreed.
If during any time during the show you wish to donate, either follow the link in the chat or click the diamond V next to your chat box, and anything you donate there, Make-A-Wish will donate up to 33% of.
Cool.
Awesome. So here's what we know about the Old Republic in the current canon so far. We have two relatively recent pieces of news, and one unofficial and one somewhat less official from about the Old Republic, specifically about Knights of the Old Republic. And officially, this is the clear on-record traceable. We have Kathleen Kennedy responded to a question about Knights of the Old Republic during an interview in April 2019 following Star Wars Celebration 2019. Kennedy told MTV News, quote, "You know, we talk about Knights of the Old Republic all the time. Yes, we are developing something to look at. Right now, I have no idea where things fall, but we have to be careful that there is a cadence to Star Wars that doesn't start to feel like too much." End quote. So that's what's been clear said on record, directly attributed. Unofficial, but is still sourced, is that on May 23rd, 2019, BuzzFeed News writer Kate Arthur reported that, according to multiple sources, Disney was in the process of developing at least one Knights of the Old Republic film with the screenplay written by Leisha Kalogridis. Apologies on the name. Other outlets subsequently have reported rumors that the film could be part of a KOTOR trilogy, though that is less substantiated. So that's where we stand on what the Old Republic might look like in canon going forward, but where is it at canon presently? And there's some one-off references that we see. In Soul's Darth Vader comic, there's a flashback via the Sith Lord Momin, and a broken flashback in the Dr. Aphra comic to the Ordo Aspectu, a Jedi splinter faction. We don't know the dates of these events, just that they happened at some point during the Old Republic. That's the big things. And then there are 50 to 60 other scattered references to the Old Republic in canon. Almost all of them are made in passing or anecdotal by way of details. We just know that generally some events occurred and they can be placed within a wide time frame, but that's about it. Only about 10 dates are known at this point, and most of them are approximations. I mean, we can get into how the old canon, the whole canon shift, if we want to talk about that later, and all that. But that's where we're at right now for what was canon for the Old Republic is now still canon. It's references hidden in little places. We go through them whenever we encounter them in our podcast, Photor Pod. But back to you, Luke.
Now, if you're like us and really love the Old Republic stories, the lack of firm details in canon may seem bad, but that's not necessarily the case. It just means that Disney and the Lucasfilm Story Group probably haven't announced anything to develop the stories and free future writers from being constrained by stray references. That doesn't mean it isn't coming, just that we don't know very much yet. now that all of this is out of the way, we can get down to talking about how we think and hope the future of the Old Republic and Star Wars will look. And since this is a panel, we would love your questions and input. We obviously have our own questions and we will use them if need be, but what fun is that? So please ask away, and our wonderful moderator, Megan, will facilitate everything. But otherwise, I'll just start. Kelsey, what, if anything, do you want to see return to canon from the Old Republic? Is there anything specific that you can think about?
And I think the thing that is most compelling about the Old Republic is the notion that not only is the Republic itself fairly ancient, but that it is built on top of like the whole ancient civilizations that were like galaxy spanning across. And so I love the fact that the further back in the past you go, there's a rich past on which is built. And I would love to see that. That's not very specific. The kind of thing I most want to see just aesthetically is I want to go back to a point where lightsabers have power packs and like the whole like backpack strapping thing. I love how much that makes them feel both futuristic and ancient at the same time. And that's the aesthetic thing I most want to see.
Yeah. I think with me, I mean, there's a lot of specific stuff I want to see in terms of games or stories and characters coming back and things like that. But I kind of want them to really establish the older look that is there, just a different look, because what we have currently is Knights of the Old Republic, even though I love it, is basically it's basically the the original trilogy with some different skins on it. There's got silver stormtroopers, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe adopt a different look for things, the way that it was in Tales of the Jedi, the comic that started in 1993. So that would differentiate it from the way it looks in the prequels and in the movies now. So I think that would I think that's the like specific like broad thing I would really like. Other than, I've always just wanted to see a bunch of Jedi fighting a bunch of Sith, like just tons of them, like hundreds of them, and I've always wanted to see that ever since I first heard Obi-Wan talk about the Defenders of Peace and Justice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because I don't know, that's just always what it seemed like to me. So that's always kind of been something I wanted. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think something that the past, going far enough back in the past, which Star Wars has an extensive past it could draw from, something we talk about a lot in the pod, right, is that the full duration of the Old Republic is assumed to be 25,000 years. From the rough extrapolation of Obi-Wan saying 1,000 generations, the Jedi served as guardians of the Republic. And so that's it's a huge step. That is more time than there is in recorded human history by roughly fivefold. And so there's so much you could do there. And the notion that you could have entire civilizations or armies of the Sith at war with the Jedi is fascinating. And you can tell, like, the setting is so strong, you could tell a really rich story with any of the parts of it, I think.
Yeah.
So, look, let's move on to the next one. Do you see any possible issues with the Star Wars franchise moving beyond the sort of 70-year era of the Skywalker saga, or without like the same familiar faces or clear lineages?
I mean, to me, it's kind of a strange question. I mean, I understand, that Lucasfilm and Disney have a lot of different parameters in what they're looking for, but to me, if you got the Force and you got lightsabers and you got blasters and it all sounds and looks like Star Wars, I don't see why there would be a problem with doing that, it's just I understand the apprehension, but I don't really think that there would be an issue with that, just because we've got so many. There are so many notable things about Star Wars, like things that everybody loves, and it's the ships, it's the sound, it's the music, it's the weapons, or the love stories, or whatever you want. And to me, once you have the trappings of Star Wars around that, and if you're going to tell a good or a fun story, I mean, that's pretty much that should be pretty good. But I mean, I guess I can understand why they would be apprehensive to do that. I mean, what do you think, Kelsey?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that is most promising for being able to move beyond sort of a Skywalker saga story, really, well, there's a few key components, and one is the relative success of Rogue One cinematically, and then especially to a smaller part Rebels, and to a much larger extent Mandalorian on TV, because that gives you stories that are clearly set in the universe where there are tangent points to the Skywalker saga in all of those, but they're not really about that. They don't carry the weight of you have to be telling specifically this is Anakin or this is a Luke story, this is a Leia story. You can tell a whole world richer than that, and you can allude to plenty of things, I think. But I think really, and especially the way the Mandalorian sort of builds a coherent story in the universe in a relatively underexplored time frame by the films,
Yeah.
And
is as good a template as we get.
yeah, and we have a question here in chat from Mike Celestino, who's the boss, and he asks, how much does the current existence of the High Republic affect the possibility of the Old Republic coming into play in the current canon?
Luke, do you want to take a first stab at that?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think it does, for a couple of reasons. I think, one, for better or worse, Knights of the Old Republic is, as far as I can tell, the most popular Star Wars story outside of the old EU, with the exception of maybe Timothy Zahn's original Thrawn trilogy, and the original Star Wars novelization, which sold like 5 million copies, but that was a long time ago. So I don't think it would affect it that way. And to be honest, the High Republic is, to me anyway, it shows that they are trying to move those first steps into going outside of the 70 years Skywalker saga. And sometimes you have to take baby steps to get there. I don't think that the High Republic is going to hinder it in any way, but again, I don't know anything specifically.
Yeah, and I'll echo that sentiment. I think the fact that they're exploring the High Republic seems to me as a way to play in the space of the Old Republic, because by and large, right, if we're really talking the fullest extent of canon, obviously, we started by saying, right, the Old Republic roughly stops at about 1,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, but they still refer to it as the Old Republic up until really the events of and they're referring to it in A New Hope, and that's within living memory of it being an Old Republic. And I think having the High Republic set out as a marker means there's an idea that there is, if we want to tell Star Wars stories, but we don't want to mess with the cinematic canon, and we don't want to mess with the ending, we have to go back, we have to go deeper, and they get to tell it in the past. And I think it's an encouraging sign, honestly, for more Old Republic stories, which I would consider High Republic stories to be.
And then Steven Schinder in the chat says he'd be able to distinguish between High Republic and Old Republic, but general consumers might be confused by the branding.
Yeah, you're totally right, Steven. That is something that is a question with the Old Republic stuff, because because it's we don't know how they're going to brand it. We don't know what they're going to do with it. And I don't know that they would change the name, but I mean, it would seem kind of weird to me for them to change, because Knights of the Old Republic is, as I said, no name, but at the same time, I mean, like, if you and Bastila and the other stuff from the Old Republic that we love, I don't care what they call it. to be honest.
And I'll build on that too. I think it doesn't sort of. So we've alluded to it, right? But that Star Wars had the big canon sort of reorganization when Lucas was sold to Disney, and they decided what they were keeping as within sort of canons of you have your cinematic canon, then you have your television canon, then you have all the other fiction sort of below that. And so they already did sort of a big wipe and reorganization, and then like everything else is floating out here in legend space. Everything that went before and was once they tried to bind together into some coherent, great narrative of disparate stories. And so what that means, right, is if you're doing a High Republic story, and if you're doing it as a show or as a movie, people are going to react to it as though it is a Star Wars story, and they're not going to particularly distinguish between, oh, well, this isn't the specific Old Republic thing I remember, or this isn't specifically, are they wondering about, like, the one that would have challenges would be doing a New Republic thing, since that's as close to anything in the consciousness a post-Empire framing, but I don't think they would frame it as such. So you could have your High Republic, you could incorporate plenty of elements that were once established in Old Republic stories. And I think for the person whose relation to Star Wars is they watch it sometimes and like enjoy it when they do, but don't go beyond that, then it's totally fine. And I also don't think you would particularly alienate the kind of people who have, multiple Star Wars posters on their walls, as some of us may do here.
I completely agree. Getting back to these questions that we have, given that Kathleen Kennedy has openly mentioned Knights of the Old Republic, and it seems like the most likely candidate to be adapted, Kelsey, do you think that the adaptation should focus on Revan and take it as like a strict adaptation, or how do you think it should handle that?
So a nice thing about a game as well and thoroughly scripted as Knights of the Old Republic is you have a lot of the writing baked in, right? A lot of the adaptation work would be trimming down, right? You probably wouldn't have extensive underwater legal debates or space fish. But spoilers ahead for a video game released in the early 2000s, I think telling the story of Revan, it is one of those great twists. And I think one of the things that is the hardest to adapt is it tells a story where the reveal is about the player identity. It can be done in film. It can absolutely be done in film. You could figure a way to do it. Cinematic language is full of tricks and telling for that. I think that would be the trickiest part to adapt. But the payoff would be tremendous. And even if it is a known and like canon, or not known, but or not canon, but known twist and known plot out there, the audience for anything released on film is going to be much bigger than even the sort of biggest Old Republic game ever made.
And then we have a comment in chat from Nicholas that says, "Forgive the layman, casual, High Republic aware person, but is it confirmed it overlaps with KOTOR time-wise?"
No, it doesn't, and I'm sorry. We're just bouncing through all of these timelines, and I didn't want to get out like a big dry erase board and everything like that. To bore everybody with dates. But no, the High Republic is set, I believe, about 200 years before the prequels. So it's about like 230 to 219 BBY or whatever, depending on what years they go with. And in Legends, Knights of the Old Republic was in 3956, which would be 3,700 years before the High Republic. And I mean, even if they didn't want to go back that far, it would even if they didn't want to go back that far, it would still be far before that, at least 1,000 or 2,000 years before that.
Yeah.
If I
and
had to
then
guess.
The
Steven,
past in Star Wars is big.
sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, continue what you're going to
Sure.
say.
So the past in Star Wars, so Star Wars has a tremendous amount of past it can work with, and High Republic would still be something that the characters in the cinematic movie in the movies would be talking about as part of the Old Republic, but it would be sort of outside the era in which stories that we know of KOTOR 2 set in the Old Republic take place.
Yeah. And then Stephen Chinder in the chat also asks, when people say that they want an Old Republic movie, do they generally mean straight up adaptation or new stories with some of those old characters, or new stories with new characters set around that era?
Well, personally, when I say it, I am just generally talking about everything that they might do. And I assume that if they were going to release movies in that era, that they would also release novels and books and comics and video games and things like that. So to that end, I think that they're going to do a lot of news stories using old characters. However, if I had to bet money on what a movie would look like, and I'm not, obviously we don't know anything, but if I had to bet money on it, I would say that it would be almost a strict adaptation of the video game in some way, shape, or form. I don't know how you do that because I'm not a screenwriter, but
I mean, and I think the Star Wars stories plots we've seen, the way that they sort of like here is a familiar anchor point character or archetype, and then you sort of have the building the crew and doing the mission thing. I mean, it's a fairly good template. There's plenty in it, and we already know that they've brought back Hammerhead Corvettes both in Rebels and then especially in Rogue One. So they have the key ingredients to, like, as digital assets or as cinematic assets or even just as canon and universe now, to make the iconic sort of opening scene. You could almost do the training scene if you just cut out all the parts about what buttons you have to press. The opening scene of KOTOR would read as a pretty perfect intro to the character, and then you can build from that, right? There's enough understanding in the public of, you wake up, you don't remember a ton, you crash land, and you have to figure out what's going on as a kind of plot, that you would be really good to be, you could start there and build out and hit all sort of the highlights you have. It's a really good, again, the problem would be cutting material down. There's a good arc there, and you could tell a really compelling story within that. And I think that's what most people would be looking for if they're coming from a familiarity with the Old Republic. I think the other thing people are looking for if they want any Old Republic story is, how do you tell a story in the Star Wars universe without telling a story specifically about the Skywalkers? I think there's ways to do that, though I have no insight into what Disney would do. I think they would probably want to thread something to a story with some nostalgia built in, even if it's a sort of smaller dedicated audience than you would find for the general cinematic audience.
Yeah. And then in the chat, we have another question from Michael King. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Star Wars The Old Republic should have Galactic Starfighter VR digital expansion and Darth Bane trilogy being included into the gameplay new character. What do you guys think about that?
Yes, sure. Yeah, sounds good to me. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck. Good luck, SWTOR. I mean, it's been going on it started in 2011, and they released another content update in February, this past February 2020. Good for them. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, I'm not an MMO fan, so that was not my favorite game, which is fine. The canon needs to be big for everyone, but the fact that they're still going and still telling those stories, good for them.
And I think, honestly, because so much of how KOTOR and the Old Republic sort of was experienced and designed as faithful to the vision of the original trilogy, there's a lot of space you can play with, but I think the trappings of it would scan to, not that people like buy video games on store shelves anymore, but even if you see it like pop up in your Steam library, like, oh, here is a game where there's something that vaguely resembles an X-Wing. Here's something where the lasers are green and red and it's space and I get what is going on. That's a market. That's obviously a thing worth doing. I can't imagine that they will ever stop trying to make video game versions of the things we love in Star Wars, and any Old Republic property would be the same.
Mm-hmm. Megan, I can't hear you if you're talking.
Nicholas in the chat has another question, okay. Has a fun one. A lot of bigger elements of the old EU canon, like elements of KOTOR, Thrawn, etc., have come into the new canon. What else would you like to see? Like maybe stuff from Legacy, XR Kun?
Yeah. Yes, I would like to see both of those things, honestly. I am a fan of Star Wars getting weird. I like it when it does that. I'm being serious. I like Star Wars when it gets weird. I like it when it's like kind of goofy, you know. And with like with the Old Republic stuff, like there are so many characters that I would love to see, like characters who would never ever make it into a movie, but like, you know, show up in like a comic book or something, you know, or in a novel. That would be really cool. Off the top of my head, Nomi Sunrider, Ulic Qel-Droma, and Exar Kun, and you know, a few others from Tales of the Jedi. Zane Carrick is a character I really liked from the Knights of the Old Republic comic series by John Jackson Miller. So like characters like that, I would love to see him back. And I mean, obviously, like characters like Kreia, but I mean, you know, that's such a big one. I just assume that that's already a given, I guess. Kelsey?
Yeah, so I'm going to repeat it because I love it so much. I want them to go back far enough to when lightsabers needed backpacks. I think that's a great aesthetic. I think it's wonderful, and I love seeing one of the things that is fascinating about Star Wars is how it covers such a span of time, but you don't really see a ton of technological innovation or change on much of anything other than how relatively big your Death Star is. So I would love to see that. I think that's great and charming. And then the one like niche part of KOTOR I really want to see bring back is the whole history of the universe as told by like I forget the name, the Tusken Seer, who has this like, here's this alternate history of the universe. The Rakuten, right? That's the story of the Rakuten Empire told by Tuskens. And that's fascinating and weird and deeply niche, and I have no idea where else you could fit it. If you have like, maybe if you do a KOTOR movie, and then maybe if you have comics spinning off of that, that would be hidden in one of those somewhere. But I would love to see that brought back to the fore. And then broadly, the most interesting parts of Star Wars are where or some of the most interesting, there's a lot, but are where it feels like you are venturing into a world that is ancient and menacing, and even if you are part of a like thousands of year old republic, there is still something deeper and more ominous happening. And it can be weird space monsters, it can be all sorts of like dark side cults, it can be all there is so much you can do in the setting. I would be super on board with Star Wars getting deeply weird and pulling whatever it can.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so I guess the next thing is probably the biggest question that we who have played Knights of the Old Republic. And if you haven't played Knights of the Old Republic, I guess we're going to spoil it right here. So yeah, I guess go if you don't want to hear that. But Kelsey, do you think they could do the reveal in a movie, the Revan reveal?
I think you have to in some way. I think it would be possible, right? Because we're not. It'd be very weird, and I don't think it would work to do the whole movie from like the first person, like straight perspective. But if you have like the sort of character you're following, to be able to have, I think the way that even in the game, right, they use the dream sequences and the flashbacks where you see these events happening and you don't realize where your place in them is as the player character. Fascinating. I think you could build on that, right? That's the game borrowing cinematic language. You turn it back. You have a character who is plagued through half the story by visions of this horrible thing that they know happened, and they know happened somehow. And it's hard to know if like you can't do like a reveal in like a mirror, right? Because everyone has already seen the face. But there's something. I have full faith in almost whatever filmmaker is assigned to this to do it right.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just such a big part of KOTOR that it would be very difficult to tell the story without doing the reveal of some kind, some way. You know, it obviously doesn't have to track exactly because you can't really do that, because a first person movie would just be, something. But I think they would have to include it in some way. And I think you could definitely do it. I just, like I said, I don't know how you do that. And to be honest, I can see an example where they don't do that, and then they bring it, and it's still good anyway. But I mean, I would bet a lot of money on them doing it if I had to. So
yeah, I mean, the danger, I think, or that the precedent here, right? If we're spoiling things from the era, right, is that they do the obvious Fight Club reveal, right, where you have the full story for the first 2/3, 3/4 of that movie. You're following a character who is clearly interacting with someone else, and then it's revealed, obviously, spoilery for Fight Club, that this is actually one person who has been doing all of this and sort of has a split thing. You can do it, right? There's a cinematic language that exists to say, and maybe what you do, right, is maybe you put the flashbacks all in at the moment of the reveal, right? You see the scenes where the Revan is flashing back to all what has happened before, and then you cut to them realizing that they are the person in there doing it, right? If you're seeing it from like one angle and you add the second angle where it is, oh, this is me who was doing all these things, I think you can do it. And I think it's so central to the arc of KOTOR as a story about redemption after like even horrific crime. Like amnesia and redemption really is sort of how you tell that story. And if given the chance to be a new person, would someone who had no knowledge of their past do so, and would they continue doing so? I think also the clearer thing you do get is they would almost certainly do a light side playthrough version of the story.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like if they're going to invest this much money in it that they would want to go and then have Revan have the revelation that he did all those horrible things and like, oh, maybe I like doing that again, and then go off to do a bunch of dark side shit.
And then a question
stuff.
we have
Yeah.
in the chat is from Stephen Schinder is, what if they make a movie where the audience expects the main character we're following to be Revan, and then it turns out to be one of the other characters is Revan?
It
Works.
in the hands of a capable director, screenwriter, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I mean, I could see. I basically most like big reveals in movie history. You know, you could come. You could fairly easily adapt them here. So yeah, I don't see why not. Yeah.
I mean, Karth would be really easy to do too, as the sort of
Yeah.
perspective characters. If you have them waking up and then finding the character, or even like you could definitely tell the story, right? It could be Revan's story as told by Karth is probably the most straightforward way to write this, but there's plenty. There's a lot again in the material to draw from.
Yeah.
And then we also have
exactly.
another question in the chat from Michael Quing. Again, sorry if I mispronounced your name. Tell us, what is the difference between Galactic Starfighter versus EA Squadron? Which gameplay is actually better?
Michael, I'll be completely honest with you. I wish that I had the kind of access that you think we had. We don't. Kelsey might, but I don't. Galactic Starfighter was a mode from Battlefront 2, which I really enjoyed and thought was good. EA Squadron is coming out in the future and is a kind of multiplayer game with a short single player story. And that's all I know. I hope it's good. Yeah. I just don't know any.
I got nothing. You could give me a spec sheet for the respective vehicles, and if they lined up some way, I could write something about what that means to respective fighters' utilities to the respective forces using them, but I cannot give you into the game.
Yeah. I'm sorry. So I guess, Kelsey, is there anything from the Old Republic that you don't really want to see return?
I don't know how you do the lawyer sequence. I think it's fascinating in a game. I think it's really interesting and good that the game spends a lot of time on how do you resolve something within the weird arcane rules of a very legalistic planet. I do not think it adapts well to screen. And I think if we're talking too about KOTOR 2 and broadly, I think there's just a lot that there's something that feels Worldtron. There's plenty of stuff that the experience of this game was a level that was very unpleasant, and then I got to the stuff that was good. That's the easiest stuff to cut. I don't think you need to really do a lot of things that feel inherently sort of grindy to go through. I don't know if there's any overarching themes though, or anything that I would want to see dropped. I think having a Sith Empire is fascinating. I think if they can find a way to incorporate Malachor 5 into the story, it's essential because that KOTOR and KOTOR 2 especially revolve around a galactic civil war and super weapons. And super weapons, unlike that which we have seen on screen, is really good and interesting. So I don't know what you cut around that other than the tedium.
Yeah, it's I think the only stuff that I would really want to cut is just little stuff and quests and stuff like that from the games that I mean, to be honest, isn't really going to end up in the stuff anyway, because it's just too tedious to put through. I mean, but I would love a reference to the legal troubles on Manon. They just say that and it doesn't get explained, but they just say that, and then the rest of us who played that game too many times have a nice little laugh about it, and there we go.
There's so much
Then we,
that they could do, like the way in the opening sequence of like the first episode of The Mandalorian, where the bounty being brought in makes a joke about Life Day, right? You could do
yeah,
that level of reference and engagement for maybe 50% of the stuff that is like deep cuts in gameplay. And that would be more than sufficient. You can just throw, even if you do the one, right? Like mentioning the legal troubles would be a great one-off joke and would be very tedious unless you're doing a whole Star Wars courtroom sequence. But I think at the point where we get to a Star Wars courtroom sequence as the central plot of a movie is maybe the like 2040s when they are scraping the barrel.
yeah. I mean, you could tell by Megan's eyes right there when you said a Star Wars legal drama, and she was like, "Wow, that's even something from Star Wars I don't want to watch."
No,
And,
that actually might be
mean,
interesting for a few minutes.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't.
Oh, Nicholas in the
I don't.
chat brought up
Go
a
ahead.
hilarious comment. My cousin Vinny, Star Wars edition.
I'd watch it. Just bring Pesci back. Just bring Pesci back to do it. Just put him in there. It'd be great. It'd be great. All right. I guess the last question that we have, Kelsey, outside of Knights of the Old Republic, are there any specific stories or anything like that that you would want to have would want them to bring back specifically?
Yeah, so I think Ula Kildroma is really interesting. The very long arc, and especially like the whole movie. Sorry, but the part where you have this, like, it starts off with a small mission and then leads to a deep fall into Sith nonsense and this rendering. I think there's a lot that is interesting to play out there. I think that's a fun place to explore. And if I'm remembering correctly, I also think this was the KOTOR comic, but not the KOTOR games, is Zane Carrick as a really sort of not my cousin Vinny, but he's as close as I think we're going to get to a bumbling Force user protagonist, where he is supremely lucky in getting through situations and supremely unlucky in getting into them. And I think there's a lot of potential to what if it's someone who the Force doesn't want to let die, but also doesn't want to have things go well for. I think that was a really interesting thing, and especially because it was a whole arc about a weird sort of proto-Jedi coup and this weird prophecy and stuff. I think there's a lot there. How about yourself, Luke?
I mean, I'd say KOTOR 2, but that's fairly complicated given how many of the themes from that appeared in The Last Jedi, and how many and how much of that they really want to bring back, because I mean Disney's not going to put someone trying to kill the Force in a movie. They're not. I mean, unless things drastically change, because that's a really heady topic for a movie, and there's a lot of background that you have to do there. So I mean, I would like to see a lot of KOTOR 2 return. I just don't know how much of it will. But yeah, the original Tales of the Jedi comics are great. I love them. I love Zane. The random Jedi and Sith and just whoever from that era are great to me. So anything like that, I just I mean, yeah, maybe they could have Alan Moore come back and he could write another comic about it, like he did back in the 82 or whatever it was.
Speaking of hard to adapt stories, was that Tlotny throws a switch?
Throws a shape.
Shape. That's wacky, absolute wacky. If you get to the point where we are doing a like True Detective style anthology show on Star Wars, you could play out all sorts of weird Old Republic stuff. And you could dive into that realm, but that's way down there.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is the Mandalorian War, like the Great Mandalorian Wars,
Yeah.
which sort of set the stage for everything in KOTOR. But I think the idea, right, that something I think that is fascinating in Star Wars as we see it, right, is the idea of the Galactic Republic's army being relatively new. And if you go back, like, why doesn't the military exist beforehand? Why don't you have that kind of apparatus until Palpatine sort of Machiavellis it into being? And I think there's plenty of stuff in space to explore. And I think having like the Old Republic gives you room to explore what happens when you have catastrophic galactic wars, and then why would you choose to? And then that might lead to turning to Jedi to explore all that stuff. That's the kind of thing I love to see in my Star Wars. That's the space I want to see. It's not any specific like ship or monster, though they should also absolutely bring back more Hammerhead Corvettes.
Exactly. If there's anything our podcast stands for, it's bringing back more of those ships. Megan, I don't know if you have anything, but that's all the questions we have.
Well, we still have about 15 minutes left, and there are a few comments here in chat. Like Michael Quing says, everyone wants to have Darth Zayna trilogy being continued again for all of the great expanded universe lore of Star Wars: The Old Republic.
I like Darth Zana. She's short. I get to make a joke about her being Lil Xan. That's it. I'm a dad. I can make that joke, so it's fine. Yeah.
Well, I think it's also
I like Xana. She's cool.
And there's also something, right? The fact that they've continued to tell Old Republic stories in this space. I think one of the things that we've touched upon Star Wars: The Old Republic a little bit, and we're going to touch upon it more in the future of our pod. But how you tell a story about not just things happening within the galaxy, but things coming from outside to mess it up is a fascinating direction and a place for storytelling, and it brings. I think it heightens what you might do, or and the questions about force use and restraint and power and all of that. And I think there's plenty of space to explore there. It seems very exciting and fertile ground.
Yeah.
Other question we have in the chat from Nicholas is, could these high Old Republic stories move beyond the archetypes of Jedi, Rogue, Droid, or is that alignment too iconic, definitive to be Star Wars?
I mean, I definitely think they could move beyond it, and I would really like to see them have some non-human characters and non-droid characters being main characters this time. Just because I think that would be really interesting. I mean, I think they could definitely move beyond it, and if anything, I think it's a good idea to try to find something new there, so we don't always get stuck trying to do the same story that George and everyone did back in the 70s and 80s. And I mean, I think that's a good thing, because like we said at the beginning, as long as you have the trappings of Star Wars, then you have the trappings of Star Wars, you have a good story, it'll be fine.
Yeah, I think there's a lot, and we've seen it play out somewhat more in the television, which again has more room to tell smaller stories. It turns out if you're doing lots of little stories, you can focus on things other than the end of the universe as you know it. So I think there's a lot. What you have to do to make it, I think, sing as a Star Wars thing is you have to find a reason for the characters to leave home, and not just leave home, but leave planet. But beyond that, right, like there's a whole host of reasons, right? You could, and if you define Jedi and smuggler and droid super broadly, then everything falls into that. But I think you could still have things. You could have, you could tell stories about devotees of the Wills who are not themselves force sensitive or not even force trained, and who go out on on quests to find things. You could have stories about monster hunting in space. You know that the universe has plenty of strange and nightmarish creatures. There's a whole other thing. You just have to be, what kind of granularity would you want to tell in the story? The Old Republic has space for all of it. You have space to chase space whales, to do investigative minds. You just need to make sure that there's something driving your characters through that space. And I think there's plenty of it. Yeah, I think there's room for it more. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And even one of the things too that we talk about and the comics did is that even within Jedi, right, we sort of, again, we have a sort of narrow version of what Jedi are. And I think when there's only a few Jedi that we ever see, you don't get to do a lot. But there were Jedi, not only were there obviously many more Jedi in the Old Republic time, but there were Jedi in like specific roles. And that's partly the game, figuring out like how do you get special bonuses, or like you choose your class as what kind of Jedi, but also like what would it mean to have a story focused on I forget the name of the class. Luke, you'll have to jump in here and correct me, but it was like the Jedi Seer, the Jedi like sort of consular, right? There's who. What does it mean to be someone whose connection to the Force primarily emerges as they see possible futures? You do a whole mystery arc on that, right? That could be a way to tell those stories. There's a lot in there besides just you show up, are mostly invulnerable to damage, and move your hands and everyone flies away. Which I love, don't get me wrong, but there's more you can explore here.
Yeah, agreed. We're really excited about what the Old Republic hopefully will have in the future. And I mean, obviously, we don't know what's going on because there's a pandemic, and that affects how all of this is. But I think there's definitely a big future for the Old Republic. And I mean, the fact that Knights of the Old Republic has been mentioned by name, is by name by Kathleen Kennedy specifically, is very indicative of how highly they think of that property. Or maybe not, maybe it's just a coincidence, but either way, yeah, I think the future is really good for the Old Republic. And excuse me. If there's nothing else, we just wanted to say thank you for attending our panel on the future of the Old Republic. My name is Luke, and that is Kelsey, and together we're the co-host of A People's History of the Old Republic. We cover all the Old Republic stories and legends and look forward to what they might look like in the future canon stories. If you enjoyed the panel, you might really like our podcast. You can find the show wherever you get your podcast. Find the show on SoundCloud, and check out our show's Twitter account at PhotorPod.
And if you have anything else you want to say, we've still got a couple minutes, but it's been delightful talking about this with all of you and hearing all of your questions. We spend plenty of time talking to each other, and it's nice to know what other people are actually thinking about this space besides the back and forth of us.
Yeah.
And I'm not seeing any other questions. So I guess all we can say is thank you for coming to this panel, and may you enjoy the rest of your time at ForceFest. May the ForceFest be with you.
Bye. Thank
you. It's a delight.